We're going to start with just a round of introductions. So, Susan, do you want to start?
Oh, sure. I'm Susan Che. I'm the new executive director, because we're only 4 months old, of Ohio Legal Help.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rodrigo Camarena. I'm the director of the Immigration Advocates Network. We're a program of Pro Bono Net.
Good morning. I'm Kristen Sunday. I'm the co-founder and COO at Paladin, and our mission is to increase access to justice by helping legal teams run more efficient pro bono programs.
And I'm Tim Barron. I'm the Tech Innovation Manager at Pro Bono Net. I'm still trying to figure out what that title means. So it's a bit amorphous, but we'll figure it out. So we're going to kick off with Kristen, and in addition to doing live demos, the way we're going to structure this a little bit is sort of a rapid fire presentation. So we're going to have about 8 minutes or so for each tool, and we're going to look to divide that, maybe 4 to 5 minutes for the tool, and then some Q&A around that tool, and then we're going to leave about 10 minutes or so at the end if you have additional questions. So please feel free to be as engaged as you want to be. Any questions about how we use some of these tools, we're happy to answer during those the presentations of those individual tools. So Kristen, you wanna start it off? And so I'm charging my panel. So we're going to be responsible for keeping each other on time, okay, on that. So.
And I'll do the roving mic.
Roving mic, awesome, awesome.
Cool. Ready?
And then we'll switch.
Yeah, we'll switch. Yeah. And tethered one mic.
All right. Good morning. Thank you guys for joining us, especially so early. So as Tim mentioned, we're going to talk through a number of different collaboration tools with the goal of making communication within teams as seamless as possible. And the first tool that we're going to kick off with is called Slack. And just a quick show of hands, does anyone already use Slack? Oh, good amount. Okay, so you guys might know more than I do, so feel free to jump in here. But at Paladin, we essentially live on Slack. And Slack is a communication tool that essentially replaces emails, allows us to communicate both as a team entirely and then also in individual one-on-one conversations or smaller groups. So this is the Slack app. There's also a web version, and you can essentially set up different rooms related to specific themes. You can lock rooms and make them private, so only specific people within your company can view them. You can send direct one-on-one messages with folks, and then I'll show you some of the fun apps that we use to integrate to make everything centralized into one place. In addition to really easy text communication, you can also make calls through Slack. And one nice thing about the Slack model is that it's a freemium model, in that automatically, straight off the bat, for free, you get access to messaging, up to 10,000 messages per channel here. You'll get free calls with one other team member, and then you'll be able to upload documents from either your computer or integrate with Google Docs and a number of other apps on the web to share documents with groups and one-on-one. If you do upgrade, it's like $8 or $12 per month for a more basic team package. You essentially can have video conferencing with more than one person. You can have access to the archives beyond 10,000 messages. You get advanced application integration, things like that. So I'll show you a couple of the apps that we use, and actually I'll first say good morning to my team members here. You can ping them and they'll get a notification. I don't know if any of them are on their phone apps, but Slack is a really smooth phone app as well, and I basically live on that in addition to WhatsApp and text. So maybe they'll respond. And one of my other favorite integrations here is called Jiffy, which will allow you to send really fun GIFs, and it's just a good way to start the day. All right, so Rodrigo's in. Great. This is especially good when you have teams working remote and you don't have to flood each other's inboxes. You can just shoot each other messages really quickly in real time, and it's great. Okay, so Jiffy we got down. Another app I wanted to show you all is Polly. This is if you want to take some polls within your team, maybe which is the best, thanks, bro. Which is the best voodoo donut to be had? Because we had those yesterday. You can set up a poll. Let's add some choices. Wrote some down for yesterday. Plain cake maple, Diablo Rex, Ring of Fire. It's just a really easy way to send out questions to your team and see how people are feeling. So I don't know if maybe Rodrigo or Susan or someone wants to log in there and register a vote there. Oh, that was fast. Oh, wow, you feel very strong. Oh, okay, we have an early winner here. That was going to be my choice as well. But if you want to plan meetings or schedule events and just want a quick survey of everyone, you can do that pretty easily through Slack here. Great, love donuts. I do as well. Thumbs up for that. And then also, let's see, one last integration I wanted to show you was Zoom. So we're going to talk today also about a couple of different video tools. And with Slack, they have hundreds of integrations across messaging platforms, across document share and upload, video chat, etc. So you can also set up, for example, a Zoom call and have folks log into it. I guess I need to do a specific person. So since you're on there. So you have to authorize Slack, but yeah, that does look like Rodrigo. Very good emoji there, Bitmoji there. So you can make a number of integrations through the system and have all of your apps essentially centralized into one place. So as I mentioned, freemium model, it's somewhere that we kind of live internally at Paladin. I know a number of other teams use it. So what's nice is that in addition to having a Slack channel for your organization, you can also log into a number of other organizations from the same panel. So you can be having conversations across different groups that you're a part of all in one place. So as you can see, Tim here, he's got his own channel going here. A to J, Tech Fellows, Pro Bono Net has a channel, and then we set one up for the purposes of this demo. Let's see, prep, yeah, talking amongst ourselves here. Random, and you can add as many channels as you'd like. So that's a really quick overview of Slack, but we're huge fans. Would love to hear, is there anything else that you guys use on Slack that is especially useful or exciting? In the crowd there?
I will just add quickly,
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, that we use this a lot at Ian, especially when we work with consultants. So if you have like designers or developers that you want to bring into your workspace, there's a nonprofit version of Slack that gives you access to private channels that you can invite outsiders to. So it's a really great way to collaborate with folks that are already probably on Slack. And just to add, at Ian, I didn't mention our mission, but we exist to develop digital tools for immigrants and their advocates, and are often collaborating with folks in the immigrant advocacy space and designers all over the place. So just one thing that we love about Slack.
Great, yeah, thanks for pointing that out. I think there was someone in the audience there, but yeah, would love to hear how you guys use Slack.
We've been using Slack for 2 years now. And it's been really helpful because we have a number of small offices around a really large geographic region, and so it helps connect and create a sense of community between the attorneys, between paralegals. We have a lot of different Slack channels with different topics. But one feature that's really nice is you can make a phone call or a video call to anybody in a group. It's right on top where that phone is. And you can, when you're on there, you can also share your screen, and you can let the other person that you're talking with engage with your workspace. So if you're trying to show somebody something or how to do something or something they should edit, for example, you can use that feature.
Great, really good point. Yeah, the call feature is fantastic, and then being able to share your screen is especially helpful. So great, thanks for sharing that. Anyone else? Any other pro tips out there?
Kristen, one of our teammates at Pro Bono Net did a little demo the other day and talked about how to add your pronouns to your profile, and a tip was also always, we didn't do this here on this channel, but always put your picture there. It's a way to personalize it, and just the engagement, it just sort of rises. When I was in a legal tech startup for a while. And when we started using Slack, being a tech startup, of course we were tracking everything. How much are we using email? How much are we using Slack? And 80% of our interoffice email went down 6 months into using Slack. So it's a way to remove that back and forth with email and have sort of a central repository for those kinds of conversations. And I think we have one more minute, so no? I think we're on time. Yes?
I just want to say that if you are at an institution that is using Skype, how many of you are using Skype at work? Okay, if you're at an institution that's using WhatsApp or Google Chat to talk amongst yourselves, you can get rid of all those apps and just start using Slack. And you're going to get some resistance maybe because people might have loved Skype and the use of emojis, but prevail, continue to make the case to get everyone on Slack. And trust me, after a trial period, and we don't work for Slack, but after a week or two, they'll love you for it and they'll be thankful that you showed them the light.
Great.
Okay, we can move on to our next step.
Thank you.
So true to form, we don't have a slide, so I'm going to go into the Google Doc. So we're going to cover Google Docs a little bit, and you'll see some insight into our neuroses as we were planning this, because we're going to go into the planning doc. And this is how sort of granular we got. How are we going to present this? So, hey, Susan, you're up with Google Drive, and then I'm going to weigh in on this.
Okay. And Tim and I are going to share this.
Yeah,
because,
of course,
absolutely.
of course.
And folks should feel free to chime in. So how many of folks use at least some elements of the Google Suite? Like, great.
Okay.
So everyone's super familiar with it. And how many folks use Google Suite in addition to using like Word or other products? Okay. So that makes sense because that's the way we work, at least at Ohio Legal Help. Our consultants, we do a lot of shared drives with respect to consultants so that we can keep all documentation in one place. And then I know with advocates, it's often a great tool to do sharing, whether you're working on briefs or you're working on a presentation. So this is actually our ITC communication session, and we use this to set up how we want to set up the presentation. It was super easy, and it's free. How many folks use TechSoup? Okay, good. So you folks are aware that Google has essentially, you can get all of this for essentially at Google's price, which is $0 for nonprofits, which is fabulous. And so I just want to make sure that folks are aware of that tool. I think folks do need to be, I'm sorry? Oh, TechSoup, yeah, and it's wonderful. Not only does it give you access to the Google Suite, but it also, like for instance, if you're on Office 365, there's wonderful pricing for nonprofits. But in addition to that, TechSoup has other things as well, even from purchasing hardware to a lot of software products. And as nonprofits, you folks have the advantage in that you can get really good pricing on products. So absolutely take advantage for your shops. Just some tips on using Google, and I think Tim's going to show Google Sheets as well, because there's a spreadsheet as well. Is that you want to be careful, right? You're having a shared experience, right? So if they're not part of your legal shop, be careful, right? So if you're working on briefs, it's a little different because I think there's privilege that crosses. So just be aware of kind of those ethics issues. You can use multi-factor authentication. There's different tools that you can use to enhance security. And just remember, it's really a great, easy way to do real-time sharing. Now, and then you folks can learn from my failures in that when you comment on something, you have to make sure that you're submitting that comment, because there's nothing like having commented, let's say, on new content that's going up on Ohio Legal Help. I'm not in Google, anyways, every day, And so I thought I had commented, and of course, even though Google reminded me, are you sure you don't want to save? I was like, it's saving all the time, what's going on? And I had to redo it. So if you're new to it, just remember that there's some little differences. I was more used to a Word product, and Word, it just saves everything, right? You're just going along. So just remember there are some differences, but it's a wonderful tool for collaboration. It's something that everyone can have access to. And even if your shop's not on the G Suite and you don't have what I would say is an institutional or enterprise account, everyone can have their own personal and you can share. And so it's just a really good way to do it, and it's the way we set this up. So I'm actually going to turn it over to Tim to talk about Sheets. Yep.
Okay. So for those of us who are a little bit math challenged and don't like to use Excel because it gets a little complicated, Google Suites is a really good, Google Spreadsheets, it's a really good alternative. I mean, it's pretty robust, has a lot of the functionalities of Excel, but it's also a lot more sort of intuitive, I think, and not as complicated. But I use Google, and the reason we're talking about Google Suite in a session about communication is that it allows you to not just internally but externally collaborate on a document. So, for instance, yesterday, last night at 11:27, because you have a timestamp here, I sent Susan I commented on this to Susan, and Susan is not going to get this unless she goes into the document, because what did I do here? I forgot to tag her, right? So similarly to the way that Kristen did with Rodrigo here, she tagged him, so he'll get a notification in his email that someone tagged him in this document. Go in there and check it out, right? So you can use Google Sheets for as wide a variety of functions that you need. And I use it. Now, even though I said you're going to get an insight into some of the stuff that we do, I did edit a version of my work plan. I don't know, how many of you create a work plan for yourself at the beginning of the year? And you, wow. Okay, so I am, so I might be a little, a bit of an outlier here, but what I like to do is create a work plan, and the work plan can be as detailed, or it could be on a Word doc, and it goes into tables, and you have all. Well, instead, what I like to do is just have if you're involved in a lot of different projects, I much prefer to have a spreadsheet. And does anyone know what a Gantt chart is? Right, and you have sort of a Gantt charty way of doing this, and I'll show you now and expose myself a bit. So this is for a year, right? And these are the different programs. Like I said, I've added it. Am I doing the right one? Yes. This is the LSC version of this worksheet. And so here are the different programs that I'm managing. Here are some of the conferences I would be going to. Here are some of the education elements I might want to do, groups and committees, outreach. There's a lot of different elements to a work plan. But John Grant, I don't know if you heard him in one of his sessions, and he talks in this sort of agile way of project management. There are often bottlenecks, right? And who's the bottleneck? Sometimes it's me. And here, I could identify what's my availability? Can I actually add something here that, and then when I look at this and I have a conversation with my team, I'm like, nope, can't add that project till July because I have a spot there, right? If I identify that this is a load that I can carry. So this is one, and then in here, the same way that we do with Google Docs, I could add a note, I could insert a comment, right? So, and I could add one of my, so Kiskea is one of my, is on my team, and I could just add a note to her and say, check this out. By the way, it's a demo. in case she gets like something right now, or she's like, oh, I need to go and check this out. And then comment, and then Kiskeo will get a notification that I've added a comment here, and she needs to weigh in on my work plan. How are we doing with time? So I think I have another couple of minutes. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Here's another. We're going to talk a little bit about Jira towards the end of this. And Jira is a tool that I don't want to go into it right now, but Jira is a tool that your tech team will use to track their tasks, how they complete what you give them to develop. So if you do you have a tech team that you collaborate with on developing programs? Okay. So often the tech team will ask you to have together we'll have a whiteboard session, right? And instead of going into the app that they use to track their progress on these on the development of these different tasks, there's sort of like an in-between that they require. So that in-between becomes like a Google spreadsheet. So and what this Google spreadsheet does is identify all of my needs in the program that needs development work from our tech team. I'll list them out here. I'll have a description of it, and then we will have a whiteboard session and then identify what they can work on, and then they will move elements of this into the other app. So it can serve as, and then if you notice here, then they would have the codes for the Jira ticket, as we call it, and then I will track this. So when I'm on a call with one of my stakeholder partners on this program or this project, I'm able to, instead of pulling up something a little bit more complicated like Jira, where there's a lot of detail that they don't necessarily need to know, I can pull this up during one of our meetings, and then they will have a really good understanding in terms of setting expectations about when this is going to be accomplished. So that's a lot more than you probably need about spreadsheets, but I just wanted to give you an idea about how you can use spreadsheets, not just for numbers, right, but for tracking so many other things in your day-to-day work. And in the spreadsheet, you can then attach comments and with your teammates. Any questions or thoughts or on how you use or how we might or how you might use it better? Yeah.
One of my favorite options in Google Docs is the ability to use a bookmark. If you have a massive, like 40 or 50-page Google Doc, that can sometimes seem incredibly helpful.
Okay.
You just give someone the link.
So, okay, so we're going to go into Google Docs, and you could walk me through it.
You just go to Insert.
So we're going to do here, Insert.
And then you can see the bottom of your screen right there, bookmark.
Yeah, bookmark.
You can just add a link somewhere, essentially.
Oh, okay, I
So
see.
you may, wherever your cursor was, you probably already inserted it.
Okay, so let's do this. Let's go, Kristen, and Insert and bookmark.
And there you go. So you can share that link with anyone, and directly in the document, that's where they'll land.
And that's where they'll go
So it's
to.
super, like if you're sharing with a team, or hey, I want you to edit this portion, or you should read this part of the document, it's very easy to just share the bookmark instead of just the link to the document.
Okay, that's really helpful.
Yes.
Because some of the documents that we have go on for many, many pages, and just sharing a document is, to point them out. Thank you, that's a really great tip. Mm-hmm. Have any of you used this? I haven't used bookmark at all, so this is great.
I think you'll see it then on side tabs as well, right? You can do certain things. I know that we've had folks do it. Oh, sorry, Mike. Where then you can just explore the document in a different way, right?
Okay, so I think we are at time for this. So we're going to move on to Zoom. So we're going to cover some of the Zoom, WebEx, and GoToMeeting, how we communicate with each other via meetings. So, Kristen?
Great. All right, so the first video platform we're going to cover is Zoom, but in addition to that, we'll be talking through GoToMeeting and WebEx. Just to get a sense of who uses what, how many of you guys do use Zoom regularly? Okay, so fair number. What about GoToMeeting? Also a fair number. And what about WebEx?
Good.
Oh. All right, that was a show of hands of about one for context. So, okay, good to know. I think a lot of people have migrated off of that. It seems a bit more used on the corporate side, but especially as you want to move as nimbly as possible and just have like greater flexibility. It seems like Zoom and GoToMeeting are pretty obvious choices. So I'm actually going to take this Zoom call from my phone, and we're going to...
Yeah, and when we're looking at our phones, it's not because we're distracted. We're trying to communicate with each other during this demo.
We're collaborating.
Oh, yes, collaborating, yes.
We should have probably done this panel without talking to each other, just all through the tools. But all right, so in addition to Slack, we essentially live on Zoom over at Paladin, and we all have the app on our phones. And I don't know about you guys, but I often take my calls from the road. So I can pretty easily, once I set up a Zoom meeting, you can send a link through in a Google Invite. All folks have to do is click on a button. They can either open up a video call, they can dial in using a pretty easy dial-in number there. It will take them directly to my link. Unlike some other services, every meeting through Zoom has a unique identifier, so you're not going to be calling in on someone else's call, which can get awkward. So you also can't join the call until the host starts it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And on your phone, you can either start it with or without video. So I'm going to try video here. And we're just going to walk around for a bit. Okay, cool. Can you guys see me?
So I'm gonna join.
So now Tim can log in.
Thanks for sending me the invite.
Yeah,
I'm
of
gonna
course.
join now.
Go ahead and open it up.
OpenSea.
So also, similar to other programs, you do have to download either a browser extension or a web link or open the app itself. That's something that drives me a little bit crazy, but it's good. Better for security. This is all encrypted, so that's also a security plus. And the model that Zoom uses is freemium. So you get access to unlimited 40-minute Zoom meetings through their free basic plan, and you can have up to 100 participants. If you do opt for a paid package, which is around $20 a month or so, you can have longer meetings, which is always helpful. And then, or maybe not, if you want to, cut them off, make them short and sweet. Oh, hello. Okay. Oh, that's so meta. Great. Let's turn this around and let's just show everyone the audience here. Yeah. But it's really great. So I'll walk around oftentimes. I think I was doing this in the hallway yesterday. Probably you guys saw me. Just, chatting with the team. You can share your screen through Zoom. You can upload documents. There's an archive where you can go back and revisit, what you've shared. You can record your meetings pretty easily. And then everything is available, again, through the app and through desktop. So this is great. Hi, guys. Good morning. Just saying hi to all the video streamers.
So I maybe should start my video. So, as I mentioned, we're trusting Wi-Fi to, so this is really stretching it a little bit on Wi-Fi. So let's start a video. Yep, make sure I take away there we go. So, yep. And I don't know about you, but I almost insist let my meetings, especially with external partners, be on video. It just makes a huge difference in the way you communicate, right? You get to read body language, facial cues. You have a much smoother communication, so.
Yeah. All right, this is getting really meta. People taking photos of me on a video in this room on a screen. This is very Inception-esque. Okay. I know, right, oh, that's way next level. Yeah, there's Tim. All right, cool. So Zoom's fantastic, and it's just really accessible, super easy. It also has a safe driving mode where it can sense if you're on the road, and it will automatically mute you, which sometimes it will do to me when I'm not driving, probably just running around. But yeah, we're huge fans of Zoom, and it's super fantastic. So while we're out here, does anyone have any other kind of pro tips as to how they use Zoom? Any other features that they love? Yes. Let's come over here. Okay. You're on camera.
So one of the things you can do with Zoom, if you really want to spread your message to your whoever your consumers are, is you can live stream it to Facebook or YouTube as well, if you have the webinar package. So if you want to set up an event on your Facebook page for your consumers to visit that, rather than have to log in, or you just get a lot of people who are at that page, that's something you can do, and it's very easy and really smooth.
And just so folks know, TechSoup for Zoom, I think it's about a 50% discount for nonprofits.
I'm having too much fun here. Yeah. All right.
Well, audience, oh, this is really great.
Would you like to use the feature where you can turn off the video?
No, I just remember when I was using Zoom, you mentioned that each video or each meeting can have a unique URL, but you can also have your username have a static URL and have it as like, D. Henry for my name. And then that way users can kind of Skype or message you or try to connect into you if they want to make a call without setting up a formal meeting.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you. And then one other thing that I'll add here is that kind of compounding our Slack knowledge here, you can also start a Zoom video from Slack and do it through there. Rodrigo, yeah.
Yeah, at the Immigration Advocates Network, we do a lot of workshops with partners. Some of them can't be in the room with us. So if you're ever doing a dynamic workshop where you want people to split up into groups, you can put them in rooms in Zoom so that they can only talk to themselves, and then break them up and bring them back to the group. So it's also great for managing groups within a call.
Great, wonderful. Any other Zoom-related thoughts, questions, ideas? No? Awesome. Cool. Oh, that was so fun. Oh. All right, all right. We're on to the next one now. But yes, you can have a lovely photo of your smiling face.
Yeah, that was great. So this is great. I mean, we should always have photos as your, as I mentioned earlier, as your profile pics, as opposed to just a blank. So we can end this call. How do we do this? Like, do I just quit Zoom to end a call? Yeah.
Or leave.
Right. Leave meeting. Okay. And Nick knows of what he speaks. He has a podcast. Is it a video podcast? Yeah. It's a vlog.
It's a live video and vlog.
Yeah. You should check it. You should check. What's the name of it?
Legal Tech Live.
Legal Tech Live. You should check it out. It's really good. So, give you a plug there. Okay, so let's go back to our planning document, since again we have no slides. We'll talk a little bit about GoToWebinar. It seems as though, or GoToMeeting, it seems as though everyone, quite a few folks here use that. And it's similar. It's a similar tool to Zoom. The good thing about Zoom is that it's browser-based. You can download the app and have it available on your computer. But anywhere you have a browser, you can use it. And as Kristen demonstrated, it's a really robust application on your mobile devices. So right from there, you can have a really good. So often we would have someone, I live in New York City, and we would have, I haven't owned a car in about 25 years, but I'd have a stakeholder in another part of the country, and they're like, "Oh, I'm in the car. Let's I can have that meeting." I'm like, "What? Aren't you gonna get into an accident or something? You don't want to divide your attention." But they can connect it to their cars in some weird way and have it available to chat. So. GoToWebinar, just really briefly, did I bring that up here? Yes. So to Susan's point, you can get discounts for GoToWebinar and many of these tools on TechSoup, which is, of course, a website for nonprofits where you can get discounts on tech tools. One of the things I really like about, and you could do the same with Zoom, but one of my most frequently used feature of GoToMeeting is just setting up recurring meetings and as you can tell, I have a bunch of recurring meetings. We have a few different accounts, and just for some of the programs I manage, we put this in here. So when you send out a calendar invite, you just have, and for a recurring meeting, you put the URL in there, and every time that calendar invite pops up week after week, it's the same URL. You don't have to send a new URL out. Another thing that we do fairly often is record our meetings, and in GoToWebinar specifically, it has a feature where the videos are saved there. You can have a link to it. You can share that link, and then folks can go and watch it. So you don't need, let's say, a website or an intranet to post those videos. You can just go right to GoToWebinar and view them. I mean, the only thing I would say about WebEx is I'm really glad that very few people use it because it's not a great experience. I find that the only time I use WebEx is when there's a law firm client attached to it, right? I don't know if you have the same experience. Yeah. And then you have to download a browser extension, and then of course, and I guess this is the same for many browser extensions, then the warning that pops up is WebEx has the ability, if you say yes, to read everything that you're doing, to track your entire browser experience. And I'm like, so usually it's no for WebEx. So I think that's it for Zoom and GoToMeeting. As we mentioned earlier, and someone had given a tip earlier that also in Slack you can do video chats. So if you're going back and forth with someone, so I do this fairly often, even though we have GoToMeeting and we use Zoom sometimes, when I'm in a conversation, like I'm chatting back and forth with someone on Slack, I would just say, hey, let's just click on video and we can resolve something in about 2 minutes that we would have spent 25 chats back and forth with. And it's sort of just a real convenience. So any questions about any of these platforms? GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar, and Zoom. Yeah.
I just want to add that we use both. I think for one-on-one communications or small groups, Zoom is preferable. But we also do a lot of webinars with hundreds of people around the country. And in that case, GoToMeeting's webinar version is really optimal.
All right. So I am going to dig into Basecamp. I'm actually an evangelizer for Basecamp. I love their founder, Jason Fried. They've written quite a few books on how to work and how to work smarter, basically. And it is each of us in our jobs, whether we are project managing, we're project managers, or attorneys on the front lines handling cases. If you're a development officer, every day we're managing a project or a variety of projects, right? There are so many different ways to do that. Often we resort to creating a Google Doc and then creating a spreadsheet, and that's how we manage a project. It's really difficult to have a body of resources in one place if you do that, right? Because then you have emails over here, you have Slack messages, you have Google Docs. And I don't know about you, but after a while, even though Google has in their G Suite such a robust search, eventually you have so many documents in there that robust search, it's actually counterproductive, and it returns everything, right? So I am a huge proponent of having a project management tool or software to manage your projects. And I'll demonstrate a few of the ways that we use Basecamp. So I think it was Albert Einstein that said, I forget, I'm going to paraphrase this, but if you're going to do something, do it as simple as possible, but not simpler. And I sort of live by that rule. And Basecamp, as is the case with some of the applications that are adopted, is pretty straightforward. It's not feature-rich. It just gives you what you need and not too much more, right? And I feel like one of the barriers to adopting new technology, aside from an aversion to change, is complexity, right? So if a tool is very complicated, it has a ton of features, I think it's a lot more difficult to get adoption across your team. So, all right. This also is browser-based. There's an app that you can download. There's a mobile app, but I think I opened it in, yep, there we go, in Firefox. So this is what Basecamp would look like. You have a visual representation of all of your projects. Right. Recently, I started using it to manage meetings. So let's start a project and run through this. And I'm sure you'll have some questions about this, but I'm going to try and be as comprehensive as possible, anticipate some of your questions. So we're going to create a new project, and this project is going to be, let's say, our presentation, right? And the LSC. IDC presentation. So I am the only stakeholder, if we want to call it, or only person that's on this project right now. So the first thing I would do is set up this project before I even invite anyone. Here's a template of possible modules that you can use in Basecamp. And it's very straightforward. This message board is the feature that you're probably going to use the most, along with the docs and files. These are the two. If you use Basecamp just for those two, I think you'll find it incredibly useful. To-dos, we each have our own preferred method of managing our task list. All right, over the years, I've tried so many different applications and tools, and you know what I go back to is just my calendar. You know, I'll put a task in my calendar, and it doesn't have to have a time attached to it. It just has to be on that day, and this way I just want to go one place to see everything. Now, on here, you have the option to add your message board, of course, which you will do. I never add the to-dos. It's something that you could explore and see if that works for you. Docs and files is a must, because this is where you want to store all of the related resources for that project. Campfire is a little bit like Slack. So if you don't have Slack and you want to use a messaging tool, you can use in Basecamp this Campfire module. We don't use it, because if we decided that we were going to use Campfire within a project internally, right, because we're talking about collaborating with each other internally, then we would have to use Campfire, and then we would also have to go to Slack, because this is what our organization, this is what our team is using. So we're like, nope, let's just go one place for that. Just because you're using an application doesn't mean you have to use every feature of that application, and I think that keeps folks from adopting new applications. Sometimes you don't think you're using it optimally, but if you just pull out the 2 or 3 things that really matter to you in this application and use that, you are using it optimally, right? So the other thing too is a schedule. I don't use this very often, but I know folks that really depend on this. And the same way that I showed you sort of a quasi Gantt chart set up in Google Spreadsheets to track my work over the course of a year, you can do that here for any project and create sort of a hill chart that gives you a schedule that you could adhere to throughout the year. Automatic check-ins. Is anyone familiar with the lean agile sprints, right? So, of course, we have an expert back there. In one of the things that you do, and especially in startups, and I've tried to bring this into the nonprofit space where I'm in right now, is to every day, it could be every day, there's called a daily stand-up. And you might have a sprint of this for this project that lasts 2 weeks or a month or whatever, however long you need for that, the development of that particular item in that project. And then you every day you say 3 things. what did I accomplish yesterday? What am I going to do today? And what's in my way of getting that done today? So as a team, we can determine if that is a bottleneck that can be resolved. What we've done here is adopted this automatic check-in on a weekly basis. So for our team, they will automatically receive an email I've set it up that way, every 9 o'clock, every Monday morning, and the question would be, what are you doing for the week, right? What are your plans for the week? What are your top priorities for the week? So all of a sudden now, our team is in the know and knowledgeable about what each other is doing, and this has already resulted in us saying, I did that, or I can help you out with that, or here's a really great resource for that. So it's become a really great tool. So I kind of like that. And there are a couple of other tools here that I think you would find really interesting. So if you have an email, if you have a couple of emails that you don't want to forward, but you want to house it within this project, you can by enabling this. So once you enable email forwards, it will give you, each person will have their own unique email forward that allows them to forward it into this project, right? So, all right, so we have all of this. So let's turn off a couple of things. We'll turn this off, we'll turn that off, schedule, Campfire, because we're using Slack, of course. So all of a sudden, all we have, let's even turn off to-dos. Let's keep this nice and simple. So we have the message board and the docs and files. Now, the bane of all of our existence are meetings, and specifically recurring meetings. So I have one week I had like 25 meetings on my calendar, and each of those meetings require an agenda, and based on that agenda, you have meeting notes, and how do you keep track of all of this? This is a good place to do this. So before I even do that, I'm going to go to home. You know what? I didn't save this. So let's change tools. I'm going to have to hurry up on this because all set. Take me back to the project. Now I only have 2. I'm going to invite some folks. I'm going to invite my one of my mates. And this is a really cool feature. So you can have. I can invite one of my mates, and I'm going to do, Cascade is already in there. And then let's send now, and they're going to get an invite, and then they're going to be able to join that. So all of a sudden we have two folks in there, myself and Cascade. Now, when we want to add a team that's outside of the organization, or a team, maybe let's say a group within the organization, but they're only involved in a specific part of that project, then we could invite them as a client. Right, so the client is, let's say we're in our organization, we're running this project, but we also want the tech team, to join this project, but only for specific things. So we can name them tech team, and tech. And then with this tech team, we can add individuals, and then we can then only share with them information that's related to them. They wouldn't see the back and forths. So one of the ways I use, just finally, that's really, really useful for this, for Basecamp, is on the message board before a meeting, I would go ahead and type up let's say today is 01, 17, 20, LSC, ITC, meeting agenda. And then I would go ahead and write the agenda in there. Now, when we have the meeting, I'll bring this up, and I'll edit that agenda to record the meeting notes right in there, share, and then the team has access to that afterwards. In addition to that, save as a draft, post this message. Once I post that message, all of the team members get it, and then post that message, post this message. And then over here, all of a sudden here's the message board. And then you could each of the team members can go in there and have a discussion or comments on this agenda and the meeting notes. So it's a wonderful way to manage a project. So I know I've gone on a little bit about this. Any questions about this? Does anyone use Basecamp? Two people. Okay. Does this look like something that you would want to use or that you would find interesting in using? Yeah? So I've started using this we just had a new hire, and I'm responsible for a lot of her day-to-day. And I thought, how am I going to share all of the documents in Google Docs? How am I not going to overwhelm her so that, during, let's say, the first 2 weeks of onboarding and training, she doesn't know where some of these resources are. So I created a space in Basecamp to not just to store these documents, but to have our weekly check-ins, to have our, whenever we talk about something, to have an agenda to store those meetings. And it's proven to be incredibly useful. I remember when I first started and how I would have wanted my access to some of the documents and information. I had to create my own sort of taxonomy or space where I stored all of this. So Basecamp helped solve that problem. So if no question, any questions, any comments?
I have one question. So you mentioned documents. Does this link to like Google Docs or other spreadsheets and such?
Yeah, that's a great question. So just because you're using this doesn't mean you have to create documents in here. You can connect Basecamp to Google Docs and to a variety, including Zoom and other tools, to a variety of tools. So what we do is we do store our documents in Google Docs, and then we would not just store them here, but link to them directly in Google Docs. We're going to talk a little bit about Trello, and then we're going to cover Jira really briefly. So you guys want to talk about it?
Yeah, I'm actually going to combine a little bit Trello and Jira. So let me pull up. So how many folks have heard of Trello? How many folks use it? Okay. And are folks using it's also a freemium model. Atlassian offers a free product. So are folks using the free product? Okay. See if I can find my Trello board. And I'm not going to do too much. I'm going to kind of lead folks through the basics. So Trello, how many folks use Microsoft Teams? Because it's also kind of a way to do Teams in a different way. So this is about project management in terms of Trello. Really simple, very user-friendly interface, super easy to work with. And so what I did was, so you'll see a couple different things. Those are my personal boards. And so I'm going to show you a couple different ways, at least that I have used Trello. We've moved to a slightly different way that we manage the teams now, but I think Trello is really easy to use. It's free, and you can do a number of things. So as Tim mentioned, you can do personal work plans. So for instance, Diana kindly let me share her kind of work plan. And so she has, the way she sets it up is to do, but not this week. In other words, if she can get to it this week, that's great. And you can personalize these. Trello has a kind of default, which makes sense, right? To do, doing, and done. And for a lot of folks, there's nothing better than moving, I'm going to mess with her board, to done, right? It's that simple. And some folks, just because they get such pleasure in marking things out, will mark it out. I know that that gives folks like, I'm done. So it's a really easy visual way. Diana used to be my administrative assistant, and so we used to use this really mostly to keep me on track. But it also was a way, because I would rattle off a list and she'd pop it on here, I can look at it, and then, for instance, I needed a particular email list. It was August 31st, 2018. And when you put due dates on something, what Trello does is it will, depending on how you set it up, and I'm going to show you a little bit on the team board, it'll basically email whoever it's due to. It's like right now I get a fairly long. You have late tasks from Microsoft for my team, but it's a way to do that. And so if you're working one-on-one with someone, Trello is wonderful for kind of tracking the work. You can add attachments, but you can also add links. And it's really Atlassian's, I would say, simple project management collaboration tool. And then I'm going to go back. You can always go back to your boards in multiple different ways. But I'm going to actually go into, see if I can, so those are my personal boards. And then I actually created a team board just for this. And so the other thing too is there's actually, there are embedded templates that you can use. So if you want to create a board or if you want to create a team, you can go ahead and they'll suggest some templates. You can always create your own. This is a really simple project management template that's available. And since I was doing this like at 2 a.m., I chose this. But there's lots of things you can do. For instance, you can use color coding. So for instance, this is, I know if I see purple, that's the project team. I know it's something that they have to do. I can add a due date to this. I can add attachments. I can add additional members. I can see who the members are. And I can see that this is overdue. So my favorite trick is to change the date and make it due later. So you can do lots of really wonderful project management tools for yourself. Anyways, and then, and for this board, I went ahead and actually asked Rachel Harris, who's in the back of the room, who is my content manager, to join the team, which she kindly did for her executive director. So, so you can see kind of who the team is. But you can add different things, like I'm usually the bottleneck, right? I am the reason that something is blocked, right? So we have something called freelancer contracts. I created a color code just for myself. I'm orange. So the freelancer contracts, it's subject to ED review. I kindly didn't put a due date on it, but my team is telling me they can't move on and write more content until I can review freelancer contracts. So it's a really easy way to do something, and again, you can do attachments. There's lots of different things. Super intuitive, super easy to use. I recommend that if you're setting up a new project and just really want kind of a free tool to work with, Trello is a really great way to do that. You can add teams. You can also add teams that are outside of your organization. So if you're working with a consultant and you want to do that, and you can add GIFs, you can do all sorts of fun things with this. So it's really what you want. And there's lots of integrations with it. And so whether you're in G Suite or you want to do other links, you can do it. So they're really trying to make sure that Trello works for your shop and the way that you work. I know I want to make sure we have time for questions, so I'm going to find our Jira board. Yep. So, different questions. So Jira is completely different from Trello. How many folks use Jira? Okay, it's about what I was expecting. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it. So we actually have 2 Jiras in our shop. So this is actually the Jira software that our developers, Capellic, uses. And so you'll see 2 ongoing projects for us, and then the way the Jira hierarchy is that you have projects which are at the top, and then you can run epics. So, and epics are kind of whatever you want to make it, and so I'll show you the way that we use it. And then we have our own Jira software in shop, which is Ohio Legal Help. And I can kind of go into the reasons why. I mean, there's different decisions you make when you're the business owner and how you want to do dev in terms of whether it's something you want to run or whether it's something you want a consultant to run. But at the end of the day, you want to own all your own documentation. And that's one of the reasons why we've decided to create our own Jira. And then since it is the preferred tool for our developers, we don't want to mess up their workflow. We will probably have them move projects over to our Jira so that we are always owning our own documentation. Jira Atlassian, if you contact them as a nonprofit, they will give you a 75% discount. So just do not pay the sticker price. If you're a nonprofit, always ask. They will usually do that. We do that with a lot of our third-party tools. Okay. So I'm going to quickly show our TIG board since we're at ITC. And essentially, so you'll see a couple of different things. So we're running essentially 3 different projects within this project. We have the TIG itself, which is we're building out a user hub for our user experience. But within that, we have a form admin or form assembly project, and we also have a privacy project because we're going to be keeping lots more personal data. And so those are what we call our epics. And what's nice about it, so I'm going to just go into here, is you can see, you can do lots of documentation. This has a Google integration because our folks are Google Shop. But if I wanted to, for instance, go into the epic and actually look at the privacy project, let's see, not working with me here. Sorry, I'm trying to, does this have, nope, okay. I'm not great at the mouse, but essentially it would take me to the epic. It would let me actually then see the full scope of work within that epic, and then I can actually run reports. I can see what my burn down rate is on the hours that I've allocated to it. So as the business owner, I can see how I'm doing on budget as I work through the board. Now, there's, I was going to show folks, let me see if I can get to this. There we go. So you can see kind of here, and then you can add descriptions. Now, the way that we do it is we link our Google Doc documentation. So it's kind of another thing for working with consultants. We're keeping everything in a Google shared drive since they're a Google shop. And that allows me to go to one place where all our documentation for the project is, because there's nothing worse than trying to find something in the middle of the day or at 1 a.m. and you can't find it because someone didn't place it in the shared. So everything is linked through here. And then let me show you in terms of the, so the Epic link itself has then all the scope of work within the project. Now, we're going to move to a slightly different thing. So sometimes what folks use the Epics for are for the sprints. So we're going to be doing what's called a minimum viable product on a prototyping as part of our user hub experience. And so what we'll be doing is I'll be able to look at, and we're going to run weekly sprints. So I'll be able to see, so within each of the things, each of the prototypes that we need to do, I'll be able to see all the progress on weekly sprints. Now, I know from speaking with our developers, they didn't actually want me in their Jira product. So if you're the business owner, sometimes they don't, for good reasons, right? There's a lot of very tech things in here, but I always insist on having access to it so I can look at the notes and see what's going on with the team. But again, this has lots of Google integrations. So for instance, I know that Tim uses Google Sheets in a slightly different way with this, but for instance, once this project is done, I can ask for a Google Sheet export of everything, how we resolved every issue, so that I always have documentation of the project itself. Now, I don't recommend Jira for simple project management. It's really built for agile sprints and developing software. So I don't think it is for everyone, but if your shop does a lot of development, it's something to think about because there is there's like a really good pricing point out there, and it's really a great way to document everything and all your tickets as you're working through software development. And I know I rushed through that, but I want to make sure we have at least about 7 minutes for questions.
Questions from the front.
Are there any other applications or tools that you would recommend looking at? I know we've gone over a couple today, but are there others that you can think of that would be good to share?
You know, I was going to ask, I was going to put my teammates on the spot when they were introducing themselves, and to recommend 1 or 2 applications that's not on the agenda that you think would be useful.
So at Paladin, we recently started using Notion, which is a really beautiful, like well-designed UX UI program to manage all of our tasks. So it's, I don't know if we can maybe pull it up real fast just to show you what it looks like, but It's got regular kind of document storage. You can take meeting notes, share projects with colleagues, etc. And it's just really, it's beautiful as both an app. Yeah, thanks. And a standalone app and a desktop app. So I'll just show you what that looks like, but it's been really helpful for our team to just centralize all the documentation and notes in one place, similar to a Basecamp, but just looks a little bit different. So that's what Notion looks like, so we're big fans of that. Any others?
I don't know how many folks do their own communications. Mike, I hear that, okay. I'm not sure how many folks do their own communications in Shop, but we use a product called Storyboard That for when we want to set up, like, and there's different, so it's a freemium product as well, but it's a great way. It's actually the way that we initially storyboarded our explainer video. We use Powtoons to actually do it so that we could do it in Shop. Again, these are fairly cost-effective ways for folks to do both graphics and to do animation in Shop without having to hire those folks out. But for Storyboard That, if you wanted to use it for like simple explainers for graphics in terms of how to explain a legal concept, you can use that as well. You can do this as 1 cell, 2 cell, 3 cells. And it's literally drag and drop. You drop your avatar, get to be creative, I can change hair color. I mean, there's lots of different things you can do with it, but it's a great way to simply graphically explain a legal concept. You do have to have some of the more premium models to do it. They offer special pricing because of with the premium models, you get to actually pop it up on your blog. You actually get to put it on your website so that you get kind of more of a commercial license on the IP. But those are some things that if folks are thinking about that you can use. It's super easy to use.
I guess for prototyping, we do a lot of prototyping and design of new apps and tools. And we used to use InVision, but now we use Figma, which I think is really great for collaboration too, because it lets designers speak to program folks and product folks and make comments on designs. But Figma is really great because you can design and prototype in the same tool, like InVision.
What is it called, sorry?
Figma.
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 And I'm just going to add one last tool, and it's not necessarily a communications tool, but I think everyone should have it, which is a password manager. And I use 1Password, and as an organization, we are going to be implementing 1Password, and you can have teams, especially at your work. If you have someone coming and going, you can change passwords on the fly when someone leaves, and the rest of your team wouldn't have any problems logging in to system-wide tools because they will have access to that password via Password Manager. I've used it for many years. I have, and as you can see, right on the top of my browser, there's that tool. I just have to remember one massive password, very secure password. If you lose that, then you're locked out. That's how much it's encrypted. So your information is safe. So I can't stress enough. I have hundreds of passwords in there. So you can store your credit card information, your driver's license information, everything's in there. So. And I think we're at time. Yeah, I want to be very mindful of your time. 2 more minutes. Okay. Any final questions or thoughts?
Maybe from the back or in the front.
Do any of you use Yammer? It seems similar to Slack, and I was wondering if there are any differences or if one is better than the other.
Did you use it? Have you ever used it?
No.
I used it many years ago, and I just didn't find it as intuitive, and it was another thing to use at that point in my experimentation of it, and it just never took. I tried to get some of my teammates to use it, and it's only useful as it's adopted, right? And no one did. Do you use Yammer? Okay.
Part of the Microsoft pool, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that we didn't cover in this presentation is the suite of 365. There are a lot of tools in there, SharePoint, etc. Hey, Rodrigo, there's a question around here.
I was just going to say, for anyone who is in the Office 365 training yesterday, it looks like what they did is pretty much took all of these tools and made their own version and put them in Office 365. I can't vouch for it either way, but when they put up one of their versions that looked like Trello, all of us in the audience were like, that's Trello in your Office suite. So if you have Office 365, there may be a way to use pretty much all of these already in that suite. We use the stuff that's been shown today and have Office 365 now. I don't know if we'll switch over, but it's an option.
Yeah, and we use pretty much exclusively Office 365 in our shop. And so we've set up Teams, which is essentially Trello. We moved from Trello to Teams because you want your folks to be experts in one thing and not have them be like having to learn so many tools. So we've just kind of made that transition.
Any other questions? Last question, maybe from the back this time. Anyone? No? Anything? Comment? Yes.
So I appreciated your comment about the password manager. I was wondering if you have any other tips for managing multiple platforms like this if you're not in the 365 yet.
So for managing multiple, you mean if you're going to be using tools from different platforms, how do you manage that? So it really is, in our experience, it's just been as adopted a philosophy, right? So when I was going over Basecamp, and there's that Campfire application or module in there, no one used it. And then when we started using Slack a little bit more, we actively discouraged people from using Campfire since we were having conversations in Slack. So I would say just wherever, you sort of have to meet your team where they are. So where folks are most comfortable, I would say go ahead and use that, and so you will have a suite of tools. Now, for some organizations, I know they want to have just one umbrella platform and teams to use everything within that. And if you're using Microsoft, that means you're using what was the tool that the messaging app that you had mentioned? Yammer, or what had you mentioned earlier, Rodrigo? That's within the Slack umbrella. Skype. You don't want to do that. So